Is it just me, or are my attempts actually getting worse? You know what? I think it's time to call it a day, Faith. You should go home, eat well, and focus on recovering. Are you kidding, Faith? You only did one move of the boulder and you think you deserve a break already? Get back on the wall and do it again until you get it right. So if you're anything like me, it is very, very difficult to leave the gym with a project that is unfinished. It didn't really matter if my hands were cut up or even if my body was screaming with fatigue. I needed to know that I gave every last ounce of effort into finishing that boulder. I used to really pride myself in the amount of effort and time that I would pour into my projects, but realized with a little more experience that this strategy of simply throwing myself at the boulder until I was physically exhausted was actually preventing me from making progress on my projects. There's a huge misconception that physical exhaustion is an indicator of a quality projecting session. It's not quite about the amount of time that you're spending on your project, but more of how you're spending your time when you're working on your project. And today we're going to unpack this. I'm going to be going over 5 common projecting mistakes that both beginner and intermediate climbers make in their projecting process, and also offer a few recommendations on how you can more effectively approach your projecting. Mistake number 1. Warming up improperly. I completely understand how tempting it can be to walk into the gym and see your group of friends working on a project that you want to hop on also. So you climb a few V0s, a few V2s, break a little bit of a sweat, and call it a good enough warm-up. Spoiler alert, it wasn't enough. The first mistake that climbers will make when they're warming up is that they're warming up improperly and or insufficiently. This can look like not warming up enough, neglecting to warm up movements that are most applicable to your projects, or all of the above. I've noticed that climbers who struggle to warm up are generally just unsure about how to warm up and also how long to warm up for. Something that's really helped me is to keep my warm-up simple but also very specific to my training goals. I essentially break up my warm-up into 4 components, and that consists of 5 minutes of cardio, off-the-wall exercises, light hangboarding or tension tension block, and on-the-wall exercises. I will be going over my warm-up routine in this video just in case you would want to build off of or adapt mine. But please note that the warm-up that I am going to be sharing with you is specific to my climbing goals and also prior injuries that I've had. From my own research regarding climbing warm-ups, it's generally agreed among climbers that warm-ups are highly variable because of the following factors. If you're still unsure about how to develop your warm-up, I would recommend talking to a climbing coach and continuing to do your own research to build a routine that's simple but effective for you. Alright, let's get into my climbing warm-up. I usually start my session with 5 to 20 minutes of cardio depending on the weather and how warm I am. If I'm unable to get outdoors, I tend to make this portion of my warm-up a little bit longer in order to build up endurance for when I will need to hike to a crag or boulder during the outdoor season. Following my warm-up, I will complete a series of off-the-wall exercises in the following order. You can also find this in the description below, and these consist of PVC Pipe Rainbows, no monies, ring rows, standard squats, Cossack Squats, and Lat Activations. Next, I move into recruitment pulls on a hangboard or tension block in order to warm up my fingers. For this one, I follow Emil Abramson's 10-minute daily warm-up routine. Something that I really appreciate about this routine is that I'm able to control the amount of load that I'm placing on my fingers because my feet are actually never leaving the ground. I do recommend checking out Emil Abramson's video, also linked in the description box below, if you want a more in-depth tutorial and explanation as to why he has this routine. To guide myself through the portion of this workout, I do use the Crimped app to follow along to. This video is not sponsored by Crimped. I genuinely just enjoy using their app because of the amount of free training resources that they offer to climbers, and also it's a really easy way for me to follow along with this routine because I do have a timer available. Lastly are the on-the-wall exercises. So I'll complete 8 to 10 boulders building up to my flash grade. And during this portion of my warm-up, I'll usually have an intention or a drill that I'm focusing on. For example, in my last session, the drill that I did was called tree rooting, which is essentially planting your foot quietly, but also very intentionally as I'm moving through each holds. This drill allows me to more carefully weight my feet. If I do know that I'm going to be projecting on that day, my warm-ups will always include project-specific movements. For example, if I know that my project requires me to crank on a right heel hook while also pulling on some tiny crimps, I will also be sure to scout out these movements so that I can prepare my body for these movements later. Remember that you don't necessarily need to hop on a climb that has the identical heel hooks or the identical crimps as your project. Perhaps it looks like finding a unique heel on a really juggy climb, or instead of climbing the jugs like a bucket, you can keep an open hand position to slowly acclimate your body to these crimps. In total, my warm-up takes about 30 to 45 minutes, which I understand is a little bit lengthy, but I am 100% certain that by the end of my warm-up routine, I am 100% ready to pull on my project. Mistake number 2. Insufficient resting. There are several factors that impact how long you should rest, which include the amount of physical exertion on a boulder or how hard you tried, the length of the boulder, how much of a boulder you're climbing, the intensity of the moves, the ability to stay warm, and more. Personally, I adhere to this principle of resting 1 minute per one hard move, which is something that I picked up during my time training with Lattice. For example, using this principle, say that I put 3 hard moves on my project. I would rest for 3 minutes before I attempted this problem again. However, there is a reason why I loosely adhere to these principles, because I have been experimenting with rest times that work best for me, and I'll share a few of them with you. For example, if I'm giving a full burn on my project, I find that my sweet spot for resting and fully recovering is 10 minutes. Additionally, I find that I need to adjust my rest depending on how I'm feeling during a given day. So for example, we talked about this principle of 1 minute of rest per one hard move, and theoretically, if I were to put 3 hard moves on my project, I should rest 3 minutes. But depending on how much I slept that night, if I was able to grab a snack before my session, I actually might prolong my 3 minutes to 5 minutes in order to adjust and adapt to how my body is feeling on that day, especially when I'm fatigued. As you continue to build awareness on rest times that work really well for you, I would actually recommend documenting or note-taking these rest times. For example, when I was working on my project Swing Dance, I noted in my journal that if I rested 5 minutes before giving a burn on the crux, I felt about 65% recovered, but if I were to rest for 8 minutes, I would feel 100% recovered and able to try the crux move. I understand that this system of note-taking can be completely subjective, but I personally appreciate having this documentation because it adds a little bit of mindfulness and awareness in my projecting process. Mistake number 3. Lack of intentionality and also direction. What are you thinking about during your rest periods between your attempts? Maybe you're watching that climber that's trying this really cool climb a few feet away from you. Maybe you're checking your clock anxiously, waiting for your turn to hop on. And maybe you're thinking about absolutely nothing. Yeah, I've definitely been all 3. One of my favorite climbing coaches of all time is Louis Parkinson, and he has a really simple but also effective approach when it comes to projecting, and it involves 2 simple questions. Question number 1. Why did I fall? When you are answering this question, there are 2 responses that you're not allowed to say. Number 1, I'm not strong enough, and number 2, I'm not good enough. The second question that you're going to be answering is, what will I do differently? Rather than hopping on my projects and doing the same movements over and over and over again, these questions actually allow me to slow down in my projecting process and put a little bit more intentionality into thinking about tangible steps that I can take to actually improve. However, I have noticed that when I am climbing with myself and there's no other climbers that are working on my project, it can be a little bit difficult for me to figure out what the beta is or what I'm gonna possibly do next. In these situations, I've found that it's really helpful to acquire beta videos from online sources such as Kaya, Instagram, or YouTube in order to see other ways that climbers are doing your same problem. Kaya is my personal favorite resource to use both indoors and outdoors. When I'm working on my projects indoors during the weekdays, I'll use Kaya to track my progress and also scout out beta videos from other climbers in my gym. When I am outdoors on the weekends, I'll use Kaya Pro not only to find beta for my outdoor climbs, but to also find boulders by downloading their guidebook, which can be used whether or not you have cellular service. And as someone who is geographically illiterate, this feature to be able to use a guidebook with no service is chef's kiss. As a student, I am on a budget, so I have to be very mindful with all of my purchases, and I understand that all of us are also operating on different budgets. So if you are interested in downloading and utilizing Kaya Pro, I would recommend checking the free version of their app first and also taking advantage of the free trial program, which allows you access to Kaya Pro. And if you feel like Kaya Pro best suits your needs, you can download the app for 20% off the annual subscription using my link in the description below. But there's absolutely no pressure to use the code. I love you all regardless. Mistake number 4, starting from the bottom every attempt. I am a climber that is super guilty from wanting to start from the bottom every attempt just in case I send. More recently, I've shifted away from this mindset of just get to the top no matter what, because I want my projects to actually be repeatable. Meaning I don't want to finish a project feeling like I got lucky that day or that I got away with something that I wasn't supposed to. Because for me, if a project isn't repeatable, then I didn't actually learn the movements well. For example, on my same project swing dance located in Tramway, I spent 3 sessions devoted to just one move. And by the time that I was ready to link the entirety of it, I was 100% certain that I could do each individual move in isolation. Rather than expending time and energy on the opening sequence and moves that I knew I already could do, I focused my attention on the crux move in order to learn that movement really, really well. And that helped me build my depth of knowledge when it comes to learning climbing movement. And that's something that I can take away with me even to future projects. Mistake number 5, continuing to project despite experiencing fatigue. There is a point in projecting that we all experience when the moves that were really easy in the beginning actually become super hard and the focus isn't quite there anymore. I have found that rather than pushing myself to the point where I'm severely damaging my skin or leaving myself at risk to injury by trying the same moves when I'm tired, I refocus that energy into recovering. I know, what a concept. That means no more climbing and being really proud of the effort that I made that day. That means going home, eating well, making an effort to sleep an hour earlier. You know, all the good stuff. That way, the next time that I'm coming into the gym, I'm giving myself my best chance at making progress and even sending that day. I think you would surprise yourself with just how much your body is able to remember from your last session, and this is due to a phenomenon known as muscle memory. From my own experience, I've conceptualized that there are 4 stages when it does come to projecting. Stage 1, exploration. During this phase, you're exploring different types of beta and sequences that are most efficient and also repeatable for you. Stage number 2, rehearsal. During this stage, you've already solidified the type of beta you want to perform, but need to build confidence and accuracy in executing the sequence. Stage number 3, linking. You have already figured out your beta and you know that you're able to do all the moves in isolation. However, you need to learn how to link these series of hard moves together. It's important to note that perhaps during this stage, you will be required to return to exploration and rehearsal. For example, if I figure out how to do one hard move in a manner that's most efficient for me, but realize that it doesn't effectively set me up for the next move, then I will need to amend my initial beta. Stage number 4, performance. Lastly, during performance, you know that you're able to link each individual move together, perhaps in 2 or 3 sections. Now, you just have to send. It is the nature of projecting to be at our limits, so we need to trust the recovery and trust the process. Projecting overall is a process that allows us to push our limits as boulderers. If you do have projecting strategies that work for you, please feel free to share them in the comment section below to our community so we can continue learning from each other. I hope that this video has provided you with some strategies on how you can more effectively approach your next project. And don't forget to tag me in your sends on Instagram and I'll be sure to hype you up. Be kind to your mind and I'll see you in the next adventure.